Hello everyone, it's Oliver here and I'm back with a new audio commentary, and this week comedian and musician Nick Helm is back on the channel to discuss with me the 1986 classic Highlander. How you doing, Nick? You been keeping busy since Christmas?
Yeah, I've been busy. Yeah, I've been fine. How am I doing? You know how I'm doing. I'm incredibly stressed because of all the technology that you've bombarded me with, but I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. How are you?
I'm good. It's like, I think like everyone, we're all sort of getting this sort of cabin fever of, this third lockdown, but, fingers crossed we can sort of get back to some sort of normality soon, because it's driving me potty. But, we're here to talk about Highlander, which is going to be a lot of fun, I think.
I love it. This is the second time I've seen Highlander this lockdown, so I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Marvellous. Well, everyone, if you'd like to sync this commentary with your own copy of the film, please put the timestamp to 0 and press play now.
Okay, this is the this is the ident at the beginning. It's nothing to get too excited about. Studio Canal.
Weirdly, Highlander was distributed in many territories by Canon Films. People often got confused thinking it was a Canon movie, but it's not.
It's not a Canon movie.
No, it's not. This one's starting with a Canon logo, but it used to be a Thorn EMI distribution, I think.
Okay.
For some parts of the world. But so Nick, was Highlander a movie you sort of grew up with, or was it something you sort of discovered later on?
Yeah, well, I remember very clearly when Highlander 2 came out, it was like reviewed. I remember, so what year was that? 1990, was it? For Highlander 2?
91, I think it might have been. Or maybe 1990, yeah. 1991, yeah, something like that.
There's that scene in Highlander 2 where... this is very clever what they do here, by the way. They get Sean Connery to do the voiceover at the beginning.
I think you recorded in like a hotel in Venice. You've got that great echoey kind of sound to it.
So he does this. So he does the voiceover at the beginning, and then he does the voiceover at the end, and then he appears in the film for like 7 minutes, and it gives the impression that he's in the whole film.
Exactly.
But he's actually only in it for 7 minutes with a voiceover. But I remember Highlander because Highlander 2 came out, and there's that shot of them in the car and they're all covered in blood because they've been shot at. And they had that in like a kids magazine, and I remember reading the review of Highlander 2. I can't remember whether it was a good one or a bad one, but they were all very disturbed. And there were huge billboards for Highlander 2 everywhere. I remember that like they advertised it, and then I rented out Highlander from the video shop when I was like 10 or 11. It used to be like my Saturday treat.
Because in music here we've got Princes of the Universe, which is I think this was the first single Queen released from their kind of...
Well, they released this in America, didn't they?
That's right.
Princes of the Universe. They released this in America because it came out to coincide with the film. But they released... What did they release in England at the same time?
It's a Kind of Magic, yeah.
It's a Kind of Magic because It's Kind of Magic was more of like a standalone single.
Yeah.
And the film didn't come out in England.
We had to wait 6 months.
Yeah, so the film came out later, so It's a Kind of Magic sort of like could exist without the film.
Yeah.
Even though it's one of those films that when you listen to it much later, you grow up listening to this song. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by this wrestler. But when you grow up listening to the song, it's like We Don't Need Another Hero by Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And you kind of like, you hear it as a song, and then years later you realise it's part of a film. And then when you re-listen to it, you can hear like the song is literally describing what happens in the film, and you're like, oh right, yeah, it's like it's explicitly about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, or it's explicitly about Highlander.
Yeah. Well, it's a song like Who Wants to Live Forever. That is kind of what I take away most from the film, as sort of associating the song with the
I think
Highlander series.
The film really benefits from the music because Who Wants to Live Forever sort of really lends it sort of like a poignancy that's only in the film a little bit, but that film is so heartbreaking. That song is so heartbreaking. That's why I ended up watching this film just for Christmas, because me and my girlfriend were talking about who wants to live forever, and she just assumed, like I think a lot of people, that Freddie Mercury wrote that song while he was dying, and it's kind of, and you go, no, that's from the film Highlander.
Yeah,
And she's
and it's
like,
also
what?
written by Brian May as well. So
And it's written by Brian May, and I'm saying, no, that's from the film Highlander. And she's like, what's this film Highlander? I go, yeah, it's about sword fighting immortals that have to cut each other's heads off. And she's like, what are you talking about?
From Scotland.
It's about this Frenchman that's putting on a Scottish accent who teams up with a Spanish Egyptian from Scotland. So then I showed her Highlander, and I hadn't watched it in maybe 15 years, and I was sort of, what I would say, I think that when nostalgia drifts away and you watch it for what it is, I don't think it's a very good film. But I think all of the iconography and all of the mythos and everything that surrounds Highlander is fantastic. And I love Christophe. Christophe?
Yeah, you can say Christophe, yeah. Christophe Lambert.
You can say Christophe if you want to sound like a prick. I'm going to say Christophe. Christophe Lambert. I like Christophe Lambert. I think Sean Connery's great in it. It's got a really good cast.
But it's just one of the strangest casting, isn't it? Because you were sort of joking earlier about sort of explaining to your girlfriend about who's in this film. And I think what puzzled most people was casting a Frenchman to play a Scotsman, and Christophe didn't know English at the time. He had to learn English, but also put on an accent as well to hide his French accent, which kind of fights its way through every piece of dialogue.
You're cruising for a piece of ass.
Exactly.
It's kind of like this really weird. It's really weird.
But I think when that comes to that moment, though, when he is arrested by the police, shortly after this kind of fight sequence, because he's lived for so long, having this kind of, he goes, "Where are you from, Nash?" Having this kind of weird accent, I think lends itself to the fact that he's lived for so long. His accent's kind of changed.
Yes, well,
that works in its favour, I think, slightly there. But yeah,
sure.
It is the most bizarre casting,
It's a little bit of a Mrs. Doubtfire excuse, isn't it? They say your accent's a little muddled, and he goes, "Yes, well, so is your tan." The reason for that is because the person who wrote this film,
well, originally written by Gregory Wyden, who was working as a firefighter at the time, and he'd written it during the sort of on and off working. That was then later kind of rewritten by Larry Ferguson and Peter Bellwood. Peter Bellwood would write most of Highlander 2, which is a fucking mess. But a lot of the script was kind of changed. But the core elements are there. But Gregory went and wrote backdraft after this.
Well, I think, that's good.
Yeah.
Because from what I understand is that the guy that wrote it, he was doing. I didn't listen to what his name was. The guy that wrote it was he wrote it as part of a screenwriting course, or he wrote it as sort of like a screenwriting experiment. He did it, and then the producers were just like, right, we've got this. He sent it off to people, and people kind of liked it, and then they basically went to see how far they could push it. And it ended up with quite a big budget. And when they were just like, we've got quite a big budget, so who should we get? So they sent it to Sean Connery because he was the most famous Scottish person they knew on the planet. And Sean Connery said he wasn't interested in playing the lead, but he was interested in playing the Spanish guy. And they were like, great, we've got Sean Connery in this film. Oh, that's right. It was a Clancy Brown interview. And so they got this... Scottish guy to play this Spanish guy, but they got Sean Connery on board, and then once Sean Connery was on board, then the budget kind of got really huge, and they could do loads of stuff with it. And Christophe Lambert had just done Subway, so he was this huge international star at the time, so they managed to get him on board. So they got this huge international star attached to it, even though he's not Scottish. Is he French, or is he?
He's French, yeah. Because he was also known for that film Greystoke, wasn't it? But it's like Tarzan.
Oh, of course, he did.
Yeah.
He did,
which I saw as a kid,
Greystoke.
and I thought was really kind of disturbing and weird as a kid. But
I found it quite boring. my go-to Tarzan movie was Tarzan the Eighth Man, starring Bo Derek, which is just porn. It's just softcore porn. It's just Bo Derek having sex underneath a waterfall for an hour and a half. Brilliant. With Richard Harris. Not with Richard Harris. Richard Harris is playing her dad. But he lends some great... No, anyway. So there's this... The choreography is fine, isn't it?
I think it's really good, considering that Christoph is kind of basically blind without his glasses. And so there's been a lot of kind of funny accidents on set, with him obviously, nearly cutting people because he just
that was one of them. That was a blooper. That was a blooper that he left in. He accidentally beheaded his co-star.
Because we saw the film opening with that sort of wrestling match. It was supposed to be like an ice hockey fight, like a game that breaks out into a fight that triggers his memories, which kind of would have worked better with the sort of flashbacks. But Russell Mulcahy sort of cuts to these Scottish dudes just kind of fighting, so it kind of works. They get away with it. But it's kind of the Quickening has always been really interesting with each film. They try to outdo the next with as many explosions as possible. But it is a bit of a sort of sexualized charge, isn't it? When he sort of absorbs the power. It's
never occurred to me like that, Ollie.
A bit orgasmic,
Sure, okay. I mean, to each his own. So what my takeaway from the last time I saw this is that it's a bit... I think this film is a little bit of an incoherent mess. There are plot threads that aren't ever sort of like... It feels like they're kind of like trying to hit a running time. And like when I was watching it with my girlfriend, I mean, it's absolutely baffling up till now. And what it reminded me of, and I think that it's got to be deliberate, is that this is almost... They've kind of like borrowed the structure off of Terminator quite a lot.
But they even throw musical cues from Terminator quite blatantly when Clancy Brown's walking through the hotel,
The way that this happens here.
Incredible transition.
Yeah, but that transition is straight out of Terminator, where he's kind of... he sees like a street light that comes on and then it's a hunter-killer.
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
He turns up, he's wearing like a long trench coat. He's got a short haircut. He looks just like Michael Biehn, really. And you're kind of like a little bit confused about who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, what's going on. You've got this time travel element. Later on, you'll have the Kurgan all dressed in leather, and he's this unstoppable, immortal killing machine. It's all cyberpunky. There's that bit where the quickening happens and all the lightning is everywhere, which is like the Terminator's travelling through time. So I think visually, and because of the time period, they're borrowing so much off Terminator. Terminator would have been 1984, and then this would have been like 3 years later. So when it went into development, it would have taken about that long to put this together. Do you know? So I think it's kind of like heavily... Was this 85?
Yes, it was released in 86, so they would have shot in 85, so pretty late 85. So you've got this kind of... there is influence there from the Terminator.
I don't even think it's influence. I think it's literally they've gone, we're not going to make him a cyborg, but we'll make him an immortal. There is a time travel element where he, instead of from the future to the past, he's from the past to the future. So they've kind of like reworked Terminator, basically, which I'd never really considered before. Celia Imrie here, absolutely fucking bonkers. There were loads of Victoria Wood tributes over the weekend, and Celia Imrie was in all of them, tap dancing on stage, and then all of a sudden she pops up as this harpy in Highlander.
She's always like, she's obsessed with him straight away, but as soon as he comes, he doesn't get killed, she goes absolutely loopy, like proper mad witch. She's obviously accusing him of being in with Lucifer or something like that.
Yes, a real horrible character, really.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Russell Mulcahy. I think I always thought was a visually, he's always good visually. As a director, films always look wonderful.
This stuff is great.
Yeah,
and I think this is really striking. That's a great shot with him on the mountain. It's weirdly, us talking over it makes this film makes more sense with us talking over it than it does if you just watch it straight. I can follow it a lot better when I'm not even paying attention, you know. Whereas when I was paying attention, I was absolutely lost and bewildered and baffled by everything.
I never found it that confusing. I always felt that Highlander there's elements that aren't really well explained. I'd always wanted to know more about the Kurgan, his sort of backstory. There's the rules that are in place. Like there's kind of things they get. Like they have this sort of sixth sense where they can sense one another. You know, immortal is nearby. There is elements in which, like the whole prize at the end is like, you know, it's not. It's explained that he gets his new powers and he can kind of live like a normal person. Obviously, that is all undone by the sequels, but the fundamental problem I had with it was that I also felt the movie was a bit too long, and the plot's a bit too thin by the third act. You know,
there is no plot.
Well, I think there is a plot.
It's two guys that want to kill each other.
It's just too long.
That's the film, though, isn't it? And then they pad it out with a detective story. The detective story literally disappears.
Yeah.
There's a detective story going all the way up to a certain point, and then they just drop it. And they don't resolve the detective story. But it doesn't get resolved at all. And you're kind of like, well, what happened to the fucking detective? What's going on there? But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that bit, yeah.
See all this handheld stuff where they're sort of like using a wide-angle lens. I don't think that works because all of a sudden you've got these sort of epic on a budget battle scenes. You know, compared to something like Braveheart. I mean, it's great. There's loads of extras in this. It looks good.
Do you think Russell's treating a lot of the scenes like a music video?
Yes.
He was best known for that, like for Duran Duran, Elton John stuff he did.
Yeah, where every time he uses a wide-angle lens, it really pulls me out of the film.
I think it does work in sort of transitional periods they have where it goes from one scene to the other. Like the end battle with the wide lenses works a treat, I think.
But what I mean is this stuff when you've got a handheld, and later on when the Kurgan is in the motel that he's in, it's like a fisheye lens. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that works.
And this spot here, where did you see the optical bit where it zooms out into his eye? It looks like VHS quality picture as it kind of zooms out and then goes into his iris. And but it's you know the purpose of another cool transition.
Yes, but maybe I didn't really watch it in HD last time. Maybe that's the problem. But
it's always been a good-looking movie. I think I've always kind of.
It depends. I think it varies shot for shot. This still looks great, but again, this is just like Terminator, where they have that crash, and then they take him to the They're taken to the
That's
sun.
true.
It's
True. Yeah.
They're just taking scenes from Terminator and they've just sort of like rearranged it. He's got the same costume. It's fucking. It's fucking crazy. Like he's wearing little trainers and jeans.
Did critics compare this to Terminator at the time? I'm just trying to think.
I've never heard a comparison. I think that you get thrown by the fact that it's immortals and it's cyborgs, and this is historical and that's futuristic.
Yeah.
But as soon as it gets into like present time, it's kind of like it's this cyberpunk movie.
Which I don't, if that is the case, Nick, where they're sort of, the rewrites by Larry Ferguson and Peter Bellwood, they sort of took inspiration from Terminator. I don't mind that at all because it's taking an idea and then doing something different with it. The Terminator was taken from, was it Outer Limits or Episode or something like that? That sort of caused,
sure.
We've got this sort of acknowledging the work of Harlan Ellison, I think, at the end.
Yeah, but I think that was probably more of a George Harrison, My Sweet Lord kind of situation, where James Cameron accidentally kind of absorbed it and then rewrote it and then found out after the fact that he'd sort of ripped something off. I don't think it was...
Yeah, I know he was a bit pissed off by that. He had to acknowledge it.
Yeah, because but you know the George Harrison case, there was My Sweet Lord and He's So Fine, and then when you listen to them next to each other, you go, it's the same fucking song. And George Harrison was just like, I've accidentally stolen, recorded,
Whoops.
and released this hit single, and you know it's not his work basically. I think that's kind of like the James Cameron thing. Whereas with this, they actually wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger to play the Kurgan,
Yeah.
and he was he said he didn't want to play any more bad guys, so then they got Clancy Brown.
He was fantastic in the movie. You know what I mean? Fantastic voice.
He's good.
You know.
I find his voice actually really irritating. I love Clancy Brown.
He did say he did speak to the writer. I think the writer was on set, Gregory Wyden, and he was annoyed that the character was being played up to be more funny throughout the film, because he's just like this kind of over the top. He's like a rocker, you know. He's like this kind of like just long hair, swinging his sword around like a lunatic, and he's not taken that seriously, because the writer sort of referred to him as a sort of Freddy Krueger style character. Where in the original script he was this kind of tortured soul who had just lost everything. Like, he was getting sick of basically being immortal, and was just, the only reason to get out of bed was to finish this thing, to win the prize. He wasn't this kind of like classical stereotype of a villain that this film portrays. I think that would have been quite a nice element to his character, because with all great villains, you always feel sorry for them in some way. Where with the Kurgan in this, there's no sympathy towards him. It's just like he's just classic bad guy, you know.
He's Skeletor. He's like a cartoon bad guy.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, out of all of those, every time they mention like doing a remake of Big Trouble in Little China, I get really kind of annoyed, because I think that film is, A, it's of its time, but B, it's sort of this perfect film. It's a perfect match of, actor, director, subject matter. It's all great, and the humour is brilliant. You've got Kurt Russell's not just an anti-hero. He's rubbish.
Yeah, he's a rubbish hero. Yeah, which is great. He doesn't know it as well. That's the great thing.
Whereas if you look at something like Highlander, I just think there's so many great elements to it, but the film itself doesn't quite. This is the famous scene. Doesn't quite hold together, and I think that there's so many sequels and TV shows. There was a cartoon series. How you make a fucking cartoon series about people that cut each other's heads off is fucking crazy. I think they've ran it into the ground themselves, so I think it welcomes a remake. You could absolutely do a remake of Highlander and improve on it. I don't think it's this timeless, untouchable classic. I think nostalgia does a great deal for Highlander.
Yeah. For example, if they redid Highlander, they couldn't use any of the music, and the music is such a key element of what makes Highlander great for me. You know,
Queen saw something in Highlander, that maybe even the filmmakers didn't, and this bit is, he's so fucking, like, Christopher Lambert's really great and creepy and weird in this bit. I think the Highlander soundtrack is better than the Flash Gordon soundtrack.
Oh yeah, definitely. Which I love the Flash Gordon soundtrack. Don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of the music in Flash Gordon is kind of, obviously some of the great stuff is by Howard Blake, who, you know, wrote the Snowman, score.
Right.
But with the music for Highlander, you got the great mix of Michael Kamen's work, which is kind of all, you know, orchestrating a lot of the music from Queen. And everything just blends really well, and it ends up being one of my personal favourite scores, which is oddly not available, only in sort of bootleg form. But the album was. They wanted it to be a soundtrack album, then it was just kind of released as this kind of, there's 4 songs for the film, and then those 4 songs would be kind of remixed for the It's a Kind of Magic album, right?
For the album.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's the only thing of Highlander you can get officially.
Well, yeah. There's no soundtrack. So Queen did the soundtrack, and it was never released as a soundtrack.
Do you prefer the soundtrack albums like Flash Gordon, where you've got dialogue from the film in the album, like a bit like Blade Runner, or do you prefer just like just the score by itself?
I like listening to scores by themselves, and then if you've got, I mean, Highlander's sort of slightly different, where in present day America, every time anyone listens to the radio, it's Queen.
Yeah, I love this.
Do you know what I mean?
It's so funny, isn't it? Yeah.
It's kind of like I mean,
in a world of Queen, basically.
It's kind of like they haven't got like I would say Last Action Hero's got an absolutely incredible soundtrack where they got like AC/DC and Megadeth, and they had like this huge budget soundtrack album where they had like the best of the best, all like contributing songs to it.
Yeah.
And with this, they've got Queen providing like 4 or 5 songs.
Yes.
And you go, yeah, cool, but it's always Queen, and I find that slightly distracting. Whereas, I think what is distracting is the fact that Queen aren't just doing the soundtrack to the film; they are the only band that is ever played, in
this world.
In world.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So he's just played Queen on his tape, and then a bit later on, he puts Queen on the radio.
I do love to get to see how he puts his saw together, little clips together.
It's great, but this is sort of like Arnold Schwarzenegger putting...
It is!
Yeah,
it is,
yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's taken exactly from Terminator.
And in the bit where he walks into the hotel, you hear this bum, 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 bum. On the score, it's just like, this is Terminator score. They just sampled it or something. Surely if he swung that sword, the bits would all fall apart.
Yeah, it also reminds me of William Sadler in Die Hard 2.
Doing karate, butt naked,
Yeah, doing naked taekwondo.
Doing Tai Chi or something.
Tai Chi. Yeah, what's that for? What are you doing, mate? You're just showing off to yourself. I mean, how long has he spent doing this little montage sequence in his hotel room? And then...
Look at her hair. She's got...
It's kind of like, come on, mate. Right, okay.
So now it kicks in, really. It's sort of continuing the sort of detective story, isn't it?
And the detective story is fucking boring. Nobody gives a shit about the detective story, and the filmmakers don't, because they drop it. Do you know what I mean? It's yeah. There's the guy with the moustache.
She solves the puzzle relatively quite quickly. I mean, come the beginning of the third act, she already figures out who he is, and But
you've got this plot with the cop from for the Files of Police Squad. What's he called?
Oh God, let's find out for you.
He plays the George Kennedy part in the Police Squad Naked Gun TV series.
Oh yes, and it's got his assistant is also the guy who's often used by the Coen brothers. He's popped up in quite a few things.
It's not Louis Guzman, is it? It's the other guy.
It's Alan North.
Right.
As Lieutenant Frank Moran.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the bit when there's the guy with the moustache who is like the gun fanatic that hunts down the Kurgan in the alleyway.
Yeah.
And then the Kurgan stabs him, and then the guy goes to hospital, and then the guy goes, "Oh no, it's not Connor McLeod, it's someone else." And then that's the end of the police story, and it's just boring, and it's just padding, because what you really want is this story is padding as well. This kind of like gives it like, we want a woman with big hair, with big 80s hair to like fulfill the Linda Hamilton role. And that's what it turns into, isn't it? They get hunted down.
It's a 90-minute script, right? That's kind of been stretched out to 2 hours. Pretty much. So
I would say the reason for that is that it's probably a 70-minute script that's been overinflated to just under 2 hours because they've added this cop thing.
Yeah, and they had quite a lot of montagey stuff to really to take advantage of the music, which is I don't really have a problem with that. But also it plays into Russell Mulcahy's kind of music video background, so you have that sort of making use of cutting visuals to music.
It's great. I mean, to be fair, the music The music video bits, they add more to the film than they take away.
Yeah.
You know that I mean, you can give it anything. He can forgive it anything because of the Who Wants to Be. I was going to say Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Who Wants to Live Forever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're in lockdown. I've just been watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire repeats over and over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day where we can just answer all of the questions now. Right. So Who Wants to Be Forever?
We also got more Queen music in the bar as well.
Yeah, in the bar. I think it's ridiculous. It pulls you out every time. Whereas if it had been kind of like a contemporary collection of artists, then that's fine. Or if Queen had specifically done the soundtrack to the film, that's fine. But it's kind of like somewhere in between where where it's just another fucking Queen song that's on the soundtrack that they're listening to in the bar, and then it's just weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure every single one of your listeners knows what I mean, which is great because I don't actually have to explain myself now. It's good because he could have gone to kind of like a tech noir bar, but he hasn't. He's gone to like this oldie worldy chop shop place.
Yeah. I see now she's going to sort of experience, isn't she? Like, because now he's sort of his spider sense is going to kick in, when the Kurgan is nearby. Have another sort of, as you say, with sort of another fight scene where they kind of deploy a lot of the sort of fisheye lens kind of photography, which is, I suppose, it's a little bit overdone in this, but I never found it problematic because you see with the sequels they just drop that idea, and I think it sort of fits within the sort of visual narrative of Highlander.
It ages the film and it makes it look weirdly low budget.
Well, Terry Gilliam makes use of the fisheye lens, doesn't he? For a lot of his movies.
Yeah, but Terry Gilliam is not Russell Mulcahy.
No, but it's a similar.
But this, I think these shots look terrible. They look, and it's a film about sword fights, and they've got kind of like these huge broadswords, which are obviously really heavy.
Yeah.
And so you're not really getting kind of like very kind of like agile choreography. You've just got these guys that are swinging these huge bits of metal at each other.
Well, luckily for Conor McLeod, he has, later on he has Ramirez's sword, which is like a samurai sword, isn't it? So it's like lightweight.
Right, yeah. But it's odd because...
Well, it just shows a distinctive style, doesn't it, between the two guys. One's kind of like fast and sleek, the other one's kind of just pure power. So you're going to give him a broadsword, aren't you?
But I thought when I saw this just before Christmas that the choreography was kind of a little bit weak, considering it was a film about sword fights. But
it's better at the end. I think they're a bit more experienced by the end, I think.
Yeah, and I've just seen Willy's Wonderland, where the fight sequences are so inept that everything looks good now. Everything looks good. Even an episode of Baywatch looks action-packed.
But I think, like you, I think I was kind of more aware of the sequel before I saw this. But this was a kind of movie I didn't rent because I don't think I could rent it at the time. It was very much an ITV kind of movie at 9:00 on a Saturday.
Yeah, but the sequel came out, like we said, like 1991, and it did have huge billboards. I remember specifically the billboard down the end of my road in St Albans. And so they did sort of like push this, whereas I think Highlander became a VHS hit. Yes, where it wasn't a success at the cinema.
It was very big in France just due to the fact that Christophe Lambert was in there.
Obviously, Christophe.
But this was because it was a Canon distribution, and Canon would just didn't push it that much during that period because of their financial situation. But the American distribution was awful because me and Nick were talking about the posters before recording this, and it's just like, the classic one sheet for Highlander in America was this kind of black and white kind of photo of this Christopher. It just looks awful. But Nick, you quite like that image, didn't you?
I like the image, but I like it as I don't prefer it to the main poster.
No.
But what I like about it is it feels like it's like a newspaper ad for Highlander, And Highlander's already doing well.
It tells you nothing about the film.
It's already doing well at the cinema, and now they got a picture of Christopher. The thing is, Christopher Lambert. You can do that with Tom Cruise, right? But you can't do that with Christopher Lambert. Christopher Lambert. You can't do that with him because he's not he wasn't well known enough back then.
No. Have you seen Luc Besson's Subway?
No, I've got it on Blu-ray, but I've not actually got around to watching it.
I wished it was. I think the visual look of it, like the poster, and it looks interesting because it also, as a kid, when I saw Christopher Lambert holding that sort of beam of light, I thought, was that a lightsaber or something he's got in his hand? It's a bit of a weird film, but it's not bad, but it's just a bit weird. Weird and French.
I got it along with The Last Battle, which I think is a really good film.
I've not seen that.
The Last Battle's great, but he's not in that. That's Jean Reno. And Subway is like one of those films where I'm never in the mood to do any reading, so I always just dodge it. But I love all this.
It works wonderful. All the stuff in the past is wonderfully photographed. It looks great. The set decoration is great, and the costumes are great. It all fits. As you sort of saying, the sort of, were you ever confused with the back and forth of the movie? Like,
no,
I
know
they said
by
like
that.
the continuity, like the editor trying to keep check of everything was just a bit of a nightmare. But I think it transitions well, to the past.
I think it's more confusing as an adult. I think when you're a child, you don't need all the information to fill in the gaps. It's a bit like the Star Wars prequels telling us exactly what the Force is, and you go, "Oh, I never needed that when I watched the originals." As a kid, my imagination filled in all the gaps, and then when you're older, you kind of like go, "Oh, the more explicit you are, the more." The less magical it is. And with Highlander, I think your imagination kind of fills in all of the stuff. I get it. I understand what it is. That's a great transition.
It's probably one of the best in the movie, I think. Actually, another one where he looks into his fish tank and it goes up through to the ocean. That was great. I think a lot of this stuff is kind of shot in Canada, I think. And also, they didn't shoot in New York. I mean, it's a great location as well.
I think, do you know what? It's a good looking film. I think that the problem is, it's kind of like what we were saying. It's not a 2-hour film.
No.
It's a much shorter film than that. But they've boosted it up. But they haven't boosted it up where it actually would have helped.
Well, they've instead of boosting it with actual story, they've actually just kind of elongated kind of scenes, long tracking shots of walking from point A to point B, and you've got the montages. But as you say, the detective side of things doesn't really go anywhere. It sort of just comes to an end.
They've added an absolutely pointless subplot, which is always boring, when you kind of like add in sort of like a mystery crime. No one in the audience is interested about that. They don't do it in any other sequels. So it's like...
They try to deploy that with number 2 with the lady who's trying to, attack the base or the shield or whatever. And that's just kind of... She's dropped very early on. Just kind of shunted to the side.
Is that Virginia Madsen?
Yeah. But they always
no lady, that's Virginia Madsen. Give her the respect she deserves. That is what?
Good matte painting there.
That's great, isn't it? That's
extending their house.
So is that a set, do you think? Or is that a real half a...
I think it's a real... I'm sure it was a real place, wasn't it? That they just kind of literally just extended with a mat. I could be wrong.
I was so in love with this woman when I was growing up. I thought she was absolutely gorgeous. But
this is the heart of the story. I think that a lot of people loved about this movie was the sort of not the action and stuff. It was the sort of the romantic element where the sadness of it all was that he would always lose whoever he falls in love with, and she wanted to have children with him and all that stuff. And that is the heart. The heartbreaking moment is when he has to leave her when she's passed away. And that's his kind of the arc of his character was that he couldn't fall in love again. Mostly he does, due to the typical traits of filmmaking and storytelling.
It's kind of like a thing that's explored in Bram Stoker's Dracula as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's kind of,
yeah. That also is it. The core element of that film is the romance, and it works wonders, I think. And that's got great music to accompany that.
Yes.
But Sean Connery shot what for 7 days on this movie, so you've got to squeeze in a lot of all these scenes in a short amount of time. And I think Christopher had to just shoot the stuff over the camera over his shoulder, then come back like weeks later when Sean had gone, just to do his reaction or his line of dialogue. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, so a lot of these moments here where he's talking to Sean, where it's not his face isn't on camera, that would have been done weeks later. So it's not fun for him. You know, he can't act with Sean.
On a different point, I think it's really obviously he's struggled with the accent. Most of Christoph's dialogue is done with ADR, like quite obviously.
Yeah, I think to get it all right. Yeah,
these are great shots. I mean, this is all really great.
The best part, though, Mick, is when they do the montage and he's on top of the mountain. They've both got their swords doing their sort of waving it around, but they've also got a stunt double for both of them. But the stunt double for Christopher is wearing this ginormous wig. It looks like a dead cat on his head. It's glorious. Right. Absolutely glorious.
Well, what I noticed about that, and we're going to get to it, but I mean, we're in this fucking boring fucking police procedure thing. Where,
we come to the bill.
What did she say?
No.
Yeah, it's fucking boring. And she goes, let's go out for lunch. And he goes out for lunch, and then she steals all of the stuff off his desk. And he's a fucking terrible police guy. I mean, there you go. Oh, bye. Oh, hang on a minute. I've forgotten my purse. That old fucking chestnut. Yeah, you fucking... Oh, yeah, all right. Well, I'll just leave all those important files everywhere. And she still... I mean, it's just fucking... The bit with when they're training on top of the... There's this amazing montage, training montage, where they're fighting on top of that mountain, right? It's great. Yeah. And then the very next scene, the music's over, and it's just a scene where they have like this another sword fight.
Yes, that's right.
Which is kind of like this absolutely pointless sword fight where you go, you've just done all of this in the montage, and now you've got this another sword fight which lasts about 3 seconds.
They throw it in to sort of throw in a bit of exposition, isn't it, about the rules? But they could have had that before the montage. You know what I mean? End with the montage.
Yeah, because it's such a weak sword fight. Oh, here you go, when he's under the water. I really like Christopher Lambert's laugh that he does. This scene is great. You stuffed Spanish peacock. I'm Egyptian. Personally, I think you're a fucking asshole. Try, losers try, winners go home and fuck the prom queen. Brilliant.
Well, I think one of the best of Sean's moments is just an outtake from The Rock, isn't it? When he screams at the lift for not opening. Open your cunt! It's like...
Does he say that?
Yeah.
I love it.
It's great.
He looks incredible. What a wig.
He's got a cracking tan, hasn't he?
Yeah, he looks well. He's
Egyptian or Spanish.
Is that a problematic tan? Is that a problematic tan by 2021 standards, or is he? Is it a tan? I think it's a tan.
He's well leathered.
He's immortal, so he spent a lot of time on the sunbeds. That's what he's done. Great. It's just beautiful.
I mean, shooting stuff underwater as well is great. It works.
This reminds me of Top Secret.
Top Secret? Oh, God, which bit was that then? He goes underwater in Top Secret?
Yeah, they have a bar fight in an underwater saloon fight in Top Secret. Sure. He does his laugh under the water. It's great. So what's that? Do you think are we in a tank here?
It must be, yeah.
Quite good. They've done quite a good job there. I mean, he knows straight away that you're there, mate. He's like creeping up on him, and it's kind of like he knew the minute he stuck your head out of the water that you were there. It's Sean Connery. Who do you think you're fucking around with?
And they say, like, for redoing Highlander, it would work best as a TV show. But, you know, they've already explored Highlander as a TV show with the other...
Highlander would not work well as a TV show. What Highlander would work as, would work as a...
Let's work as a period piece, wouldn't it? Like, you start really early on and then sort of work your way through the decades, you know, or centuries.
Yeah, you give it... I mean, you could give it a huge budget, but what it should really work as is it should work as a tournament film. Where you have friendships and alliances, and one, you know, when you get to present day, and then he's hanging out with his mate, well,
the film does deploy like little nuggets of like there's friendship between some immortals, right? Because he meets up with his friend on that in New York on the bridge, and they sort of reminisce about their past. But that was the only little element of that, which I think they should have explored more of that.
That should be the film.
Yeah, not like because what we've seen so far is like everyone he encounters is just an enemy. You know, there's no sort of like they don't disagree with the rules, or whatever. I think Highlander Endgame there is a kind of bit more of that sort of connection they have with friendships and stuff. But
yes, but no one gives a fuck by the time you get to Highlander Endgame.
No.
You know, it's like, you know, you got Highlander, then you got Highlander 2, which upset everyone, and then you got Highlander 3, which is like, no, sorry guys, come back. We're kind of like doing, it's like Highlander again, right?
But it was really boring.
Highlander Endgame, and it's like, no one gives a fuck. No one gives a... This is Rocky 3.
Yep.
It's just really weird. Why is Sean Connery training him? Why?
That is the funny thing, isn't it? Because what is his ultimate mission and goal? Who's setting him on to do this? He's just training him to... Well, also,
his ultimate mission and goal is to be Obi-Wan Kenobi in a film which doesn't require an Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like Sean's available for 7 minutes.
Because isn't Sean's character after the prize as well, you know, ultimately?
Yeah, well, ultimately. So if he's training him...
He's still going to try and kill him at some point.
It's not like he's getting to the end of his life where, you know, basically it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, isn't it? Where you need him to...
Yeah.
Where you need him to die.
You need him to throw in exposition about what this is all about. Because he can't discover it by himself, you know.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful photography.
Whereas I think that if it was a series of battles between immortals, that would be... And you have like this main big bad guy that's like haunting them throughout history. You have people having to kill their own friends begrudgingly, but you know, it's like a battle to the death. I think that makes it really interesting.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like they don't have the budget for that, so...
Well, they often said this film was kind of too ambitious for its... and has too many ideas, that it should really buckle under its own weight, but ultimately it kind of gets away with it, you know, because it was ultimately become this kind of cult classic. I think beyond a cult classic, because they made sequels and TV shows, so it was a successful franchise that found such a large audience. I think where many sort of come to accept its many problems, and it's just like, you know, you're like this kind of you're like the abusive partner and all that, or being abused, because you're just constantly getting all these sequels which are all just fuck up continuity and fuck up the rules, don't they?
It's an incredible franchise because there's not one good film.
I disagree. No, I love this one though. I love this one.
There's so many, but I love this film. I just don't think it's particularly good.
Objectively, it should be a mess, but you know,
it is a mess, which is the problem. But the elements to it, Sean Connery's great, Christopher Lambert's great, the Highlands are great, the scenery is great, the mythology is great. It's just not the right film for it, particularly.
Would you say it's kind of it's more style over substance, basically? You know, I suppose you could argue that with a lot of Tim Burton films, where it's kind of they spent too much time on to make it look make it look great, but there's something missing.
No, I think that I think what it is in your memory, Highlander is a great film, and then when you actually sit down and watch it, you're like, it's not. Okay, cool. There are moments like that's a really great shot. He's winded, so he's facing away from the camera. And then you've got like this fucking scene, and you're just like, why have you got this scene here? You've just had the whole training sequence, and now he's still training him. It's kind of like we don't need this. Do you know what I mean? He's literally just beaten Sean Connery on the top of a mountain, so he's finished his training, and now they're doing it again, where he's literally just training him. And now they've got another sword fight, and it's kind of like you don't. It's the same beat.
Yeah, it does feel slightly. Yeah, it's unneeded. It should have been just added beforehand, before they got to this kind of montage. But it should have ended the montage, then cut to this sequence where he then reveals that you can't have children, and that's the sad element to it all, because Heather's kind of will essentially be wasting her time,
Yes,
she wants a family.
But if you were remaking this, then you would be able to go, right, we need a montage sequence where he's being trained, and then you would nail that. It's just these elements aren't particularly like it's all a bit kind of like we're piecing the film together in the edit, as opposed to we knew what we were making.
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of rewrites going on. They're changing things.
And I think there's padding going on. I think there's a lot of padding going on. You don't need Sean Connery and you don't need Christopher Lambert for any of those police scenes. Do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if they got into the edit and were like, we've got an hour. All right. Well, let's add a police story and like pad it out a bit, This scene's great when he's like saying,
He's copping a feel as well.
I think you should definitely tell her. You should leave her. Leave her. Connor. Don't go. Stay with me.
We could both be Egyptian. Because Sean Connery's character, Ramirez, has an interesting background as well, where he was married in love with a Japanese lady or like princess, and I think like
that's where the sword comes
from.
The
same sword came from, yeah, and that's all kind of. But as you were kind of mentioning earlier about if they begin to explain more, it becomes less interesting. So if they had done a series or whatever, or explored more of Ramirez's background, it makes me like, it's a bit crap. But the nuggets of information you're given creates an interesting kind of narrative in your head to his backstory. It lends
itself.
To mythos, to myth, doesn't it? That's what makes it work. I think the sort of myth of the characters I think that's makes it. I think people were attracted to it.
Sure, but he, like Christopher Lambert, is playing the Highlander, right?
Yeah.
But they are immortals. They're not called Highlanders. He's Highlander because he's from Scotland.
Yeah.
Right? So you could follow any of them. You could follow any character through time up to, what is it called? The Quickening. Is that
that's the transition of like gaining their power and knowledge, isn't it?
So what's the ultimate battle called at the end?
Well, it's called the prize, don't they? So the prize is, no one knows what a prize is until the very end, when he talks to him like, Sean Connery's voice says he can now hear everyone, like all their thoughts, which is a bit nosy, isn't it, really? And he can
it's a bit
have
like
children.
The Dark Knight. It's a bit like abusing your technological advancements.
He becomes Google, doesn't he? He becomes Amazon, Echo, whatever it is.
He's Facebook. He's Zuckerberg.
McLeod, you've become Facebook. It's like...
You have become Zuckerberg. This is, I think Sean Connery's so good looking in this film. It's great.
He didn't seem to age, did he? For a long time, he just looked the same for like 20 years because he just like, he just grew into his face and just like looked the same, for so long. Because he obviously hiding behind a beard or whatever, but there was this, he just, even up to like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or whatever, or the Extraordinary League of Gentlemen, he just looked the same till that point,
Mm-hmm. This is a bit suspicious. So I fucked this woman. I'm such a pussy hound. Would you like some more wine, Connor's wife?
More bread.
But where is he? Like, there's no explanation.
That's the funny thing. Where is he gone? Where's McLeod in the whole?
So it's like all these details. Like, all right, Connor needs to not be at home while Ramirez is basically heavily flirting with his girl. But Connor needs to not be there.
Yeah.
But there's no explanation of where he is, or
Yeah.
where he's gone, or what he's doing. And it's just little bits like that where you could have had a really great scene where he had to go and do something.
Well, he had like a mission or something, like to complete something, like a like a quest,
and,
a mini quest.
Do you know what I mean?
You know.
And he never forgave himself because he wasn't there when he was needed, and he's psychologically scarred by the fact that he wasn't there and he could have saved his friend and all of that stuff. But there's none of that. It's literally a standalone fight sequence where, spoiler alert, Sean Connery... I mean, why would this be the first time that you've seen this film? With me talking over it.
I love how like Clancy Brown, it's like a very sort of buffed up, angry Brian May, isn't he? Ramirez.
Sure.
Sort of comes in.
But this sequence is incredible. It's enjoyable, but it's fucking insane.
Yeah.
Where the castle starts exploding and falling apart, and
It's like the castle's been held together by cowpats. You know, it just like falls apart so
Sure.
easily. You know.
But this is sort of music video-y, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it's like they have this kind of dramatic sequence where Ramirez is going to get stabbed and he's decapitated, and he has the quickening moment. Then they play it off with a bit of humour, where the whole structure breaks. He goes, "Whoa," just falls through, falls to the ground. He's complete klutz, isn't he, Clancy Brown's character? I think that his frustration was that he was played for laughs and not this kind of bit more of a serious kind of character.
Yeah, I think that I'd be happy with like a two-dimensional bad guy who's like this very menacing, threatening character, or I'd be happy with kind of like a tragic bad guy.
Yeah, I think a tragic one. It's always have him lit in shadow or something like that, so you don't really see him all the time fully at all. Because his introduction's wonderful, isn't it? With the horse.
Yeah, it's neither of those things. It's not like tragic in an interesting way.
No,
and it's not so two-dimensional. They've fleshed him out by making him sort of like really heavy-handed and buffoony. And
I love how the swords have some sort of like power to them when they strike something. It's like bolts of like these kind of flashes of light. It sort of throws it into comic booky, fantastical stuff, doesn't it?
Well, obviously, you've not been in many sword fights, Oliver, because that's what happens when you sword fight. It's weird. I watched this just before Christmas. This is a lot better than it was just before Christmas. I think it's because we're talking over it though. Like, I think if you're actually just watching it and paying attention and trying to sort of like make sense of it, especially with someone that's never seen it before, and they're going, "What?" You kind of like you can't justify it. You're kind of like going, "Yeah, I know. It's just go with it. Just imagine you're 10."
I watched it with my girlfriend. I think she kind of did lose interest kind of halfway in. I think, as you sort of pointed out with the detective stuff, as soon as that sort of kicks in, you sort of look to your side. You see them; they're on their phone now. They're on Instagram, whatever. They've lost interest.
It's boring. All of this stuff is great and visually interesting, even if it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, why has he stabbed him?
We'll just go for the head straight away.
Just always go for the head.
But I was always sad though when even as a kid, I was like, no, you can't have Sean Connery die. Fucking James Bond, you can't kill him off.
No, but contractually, his time was up on set.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like those little bits, like not explaining where Connor is and all of that.
Yeah.
That show it its restraints. It shows its budgetary restraints. It's kind of like they've had to film a film. They haven't got enough time to film a sequence with Sean Connery, so they've got to kind of like film this bit. This is more important than that bit. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
this is like Wild Boys from Duran Duran. sort of sort of visual elements.
Right. Is that the one that he did?
Yeah, it was Russell McKay had directed. Yeah, I think that's actually when he was editing that music video, he got the call for this film because I've not seen.
He did Wild Boys, did he?
Yeah, I've not seen Razorback, his first feature film.
About the pig.
Yeah, big warthog, whatever it is. I do want to see that because that was shot like CinemaScope, like proper 2:3:5 to 1. So Russell's stuff kind of later on will often have this kind of aspect ratio where like there's like The Shadow is also another film that's kind of flawed but is visually very interesting. What was that? There's one movie Russell did. I think it was like 1991. Actually, I think just after Highlander 2, which is it's got Denzel Washington in it. It's a great action movie written by Stephen E. D'Souza. Where's it gone? I had the name of it.
Ricochet?
Ricochet, well done. Yeah, that was a great movie. I enjoyed that.
Is that the one with John Lithgow in it?
Yeah, it's playing a great bad guy.
Right.
And he's done a couple of other films, but he's kind of faltered by the side. But he did like TV shows like Teen Wolf, and he did.
Who did the Blob remake?
Oh, that's Chuck Russell. He did The Mask, and
so Chuck Russell did The Mask, which came out around the same time as The Shadow.
Yes,
Chuck Russell did The Scorpion King.
No, that is Russell
Russell...
McKay. I think that's Russell McKay. He did that. He did one
so
of them.
did Chuck Russell do one of the sequels?
He did, or maybe the other way around.
So those two are kind of like linked in my head.
It's the Russell, isn't it, in the name? But Russell McKay, he did probably out of all the Resident Evil movies, which are all terrible, I think, really. The third one he did, which I thought was kind of vaguely interesting because it was a bit Mad Max, and it kind of fit with Russell being Australian as well. It sort of fits.
Those films could really do with having numbers on them.
They really did. Yeah, definitely.
There's so many of them that I don't know where to start, and I probably will never get round to it.
Retribution, Extinction, Requiem or something. I don't know. So this sequence here, we know it goes back to World War II, and he saves a little girl from the Nazis. This was in the international cut, and they cut it out for the US distribution. Right. Then they released like a director's cut, which had this back in it.
If you look at it, it's kind of right. They've got 5 guys in uniform. They've gone to like the,
some barn in Surrey or something.
The Royals, the Royal Shakespeare Company's costume department. Yeah. They've got a load of costumes. They've got one vehicle. And they're filming on the Docklands, It's kind of, it looks really kind of... Oh, and as a child, I never questioned the fact that it was a World War II sequence.
Oh, right.
And then when you're older, you look at it and you kind of like go, oh, wow, they were really inventive. They've managed to do they've managed to fit in another time period on this tiny budget.
Yeah. I think it works as well. And the little girl's reaction, which just goes... They're all dead. It's just like it felt real, I think that's a really good sort of performance there. And they go to the 17th century, I think, for the pistol.
That's great, that bit.
Which the writer said he had inspiration from the film The Duelists by Ridley Scott, which was just this guy just endlessly wanting to challenge him, won't stop. Which is
This is terrible. Whatever you say, Jack, you're the master race.
He's laughing.
The Duelist. That's a great film. That's The Duelist is kind of like a period version of Terminator.
Yeah.
Where there's this guy that just pursues this guy across Napoleonic Europe for an entire film. It's great.
It's oddly they bring this lady back for like for Highlander Endgame just for like a random cameo at the beginning. She gets killed, they blow up his antique shop and.
Oh really?
Yeah. That film was kind of really trying to sort of bring everyone back from the first one because they brought back the lady, his love interest, from the first one as well, and obviously set in the past and. Yeah, they sort of try and shoot it from different different. They recreate certain scenes and add additional ones to sort of expand upon his backstory, which is kind of all right. Then it sort of falls apart.
What a waste of time. Well, I've seen Endgame. I saw it when it was on VHS in 2000.
So yeah, something like that. Yeah, but I think it's about 2001. It came out in 2000. Yeah. It was like the last theatrical kind of film for Highlander. But some countries
was it theatrical?
Some countries it didn't come out theatrically. So
I don't think it came out theatrically in England, did it?
I think it did, because Highlander's always had a bit of a fan base here. So
I felt like it was more of a Highlander TV series than it was.
Well, it's bridging, wasn't it? It's bridging the TV show with the film. And if you haven't seen the series, you're like fucking lost. You don't know what's going on.
It felt like more like it was a TV series production that had got the cash together for Christopher Lambert, rather than it was like a genuine attempt at making another Highlander film.
It's like it was a TV show with ambitions to make a movie. You know?
Yeah, well, it felt like they were kind of. It was like when Eddie Murphy did the Beverly Hills Cop kind of TV series, and the pilot, which was never aired, was basically it was Eddie Murphy turns up for a cameo to sort of hand the reins over to his son, and then the series was going to be about his son.
Right.
And it's like that where they kind of like go, no, I never saw it. It sounds terrible, but it's kind of like, okay, great. We've got Christopher Lambert to do like a sort of like a feature. That's what it feels like. It feels like a feature-length pilot in order to sort of like set up the TV series. Although I think the TV series had already been on by that point.
Yeah, of course. It had been on for like 7 or 8 years, and they had Christopher in the TV show to sort of pass the baton on to the other guy.
Once you've gone, because it wasn't like HBO TV. It wasn't kind of like Netflix TV.
No, it was like Sci-Fi Channel, Sky One sort of stuff.
So once you've done that, you can't go back to making films, really.
Christopher Lambert will always be known for playing Conor McLeod, right? That is his James Bond, whatever, to Sean Connery. But he did other movies. We did like Fortress, which is quite a good sci-fi kind of movie. I like that. He did a sequel to that, which is terrible.
He did Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat, yeah, exactly. Which is kind of even as a kid or teenager, I thought that is not Raiden. But it's just Christopher Lambert being himself with his cheesy laugh and a bit of a sense of humour.
He was in that Coen Brothers film Hail Caesar.
Yeah, he was playing a director, wasn't he? I think. And then oddly, for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they had Nicholas Hammond play a director as well, like getting the old Spider-Man from the 70s show to turn up. But he was great in Hail Caesar. I enjoyed that.
I don't remember him being in it, but I remember he was in it. I always think that Christopher Lambert looks incredibly like Thomas Jane.
He does, yeah.
And I always think that, you could sort of like... You could have got Thomas Jane to do like a
Highlander sequel.
A coherent Highlander movie. This is a bit mean. I grew up, I've always really liked Christopher Lambert, and I've always had like a lot of... maybe unearned affection for him, based entirely around the Highlander films.
He's a likable actor, isn't he?
Yeah, every time he does something else, I feel really happy for him, which might be a bit patronising, but I'm just like, oh yeah, good for you.
You got another job. Well done.
No, but I do. I'm just like, I mean, after this film, whatever you say, Jack, you're the master race. You kind of like go, and he worked again. Great.
You gave that guy a job?
Why, you cruising for a piece of ass? He's... Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a... Because it's, he's not like the most physical actor either. Like you say, he couldn't see because he was very short-sighted.
Yeah.
But without his glasses. But it's not like a hugely physical performance where you kind of go, God, only he could have done it. It's kind of like one of those performances where you go, well, he's not very physical and he's not very convincing in, an English language part.
I think he does a lot. He does a lot with his eyes, though. He acts with his eyes quite a lot. There's a lot of scenes which just focus on his look, and I think they cast him because they felt he was quite mysterious,
But that's kind of like.
I think that's kind of PR fluff,
That's kind of like the minimum you should be able to do as an actor.
Yeah.
Is to act with your eyes. What are you saying? You're clutching at straws here, mate. Fucking, let's get a franchise out of it. Those eyes are back.
This is a sad moment now, isn't it? With the great music kicks in. Like, Brian May's He Wants to Live Forever.
It's great. Such an incredible song. It's... it exceeds the restraints of the film, this song. And because this song is even part of the film, it elevates the film,
Yeah.
It's not like this is a great film and then they've used this song really well. It's kind of like this is an okay film and this song absolutely makes the film, 10 times better by being in it.
Well, that's why I always concerned if they did a remake and they didn't use the Queen music, it wouldn't work. I don't think. It's such an important part. It's so integral to this Highlander. It's like you take an element away like that. It's just a strong element.
I think that you could let go. You could let go of this film and just kind of let it be its own thing. That's the problem with most remakes, is that they're kind of like, they don't respect the original enough to just leave it alone. But they are fully aware that they need the remake and they need they need the original and they need all of those references to make it work. And I think just let it go and do something different with it.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, the producers of this film, beforehand, they'd done a couple of movies. Once this movie was kind of successful, essentially with home video, their whole career has just been defined by producing Highlander stuff. Just milking the cash cow as much as they could. They did the TV show. Remember the spin-off show Raven or something like that? Do you remember that?
No. I've got the Highlander board game.
Got a board game? Was that based on a movie or TV show?
There's so many pieces. I got it out of the box and I was just like, fuck that, I'm going to put it right. Do you remember the Batman board game that came out for the movie?
Yes, I had that, yeah.
That was so fucking complicated. I had flashbacks of that and I was like, I'm not playing. I put it right back again. I haven't built up enough energy to get to the board game. This seems lovely. Although the makeup is like...
It's atrocious, yeah. She just like...
Ironically, the makeup hasn't aged well.
Yeah. Especially when you see it in high definition, you think, oh God, think of the makeup. It's not very good. You're so used to shitty resolution of VHS, you kind of hides those, problems. But...
Oh.
My birthday.
I will. Oh, that's beautiful though. I know it's a commentary, but it feels rude to sort of talk over this bit.
But it's the most important part of the movie, I think. It's its strongest element. It's not the action. It's all about the lost love and heartbreak of not being with her.
The action is fairly underwhelming.
When it comes to the third act, when they're fighting on top of the that building, and it's like all the water there, and it's just really clunky, and you can see the stunt doubles really clearly. I'm like, why don't they shoot from a different angle? But once they fall through into a building, which doesn't really make sense.
But they add all the electricity at the end to hide the fact that he's on wires.
Yeah,
the electricity is just animated over the wires. Yeah. That's interesting that the electricity is going straight into his shoulders.
Shoulder powers, he's getting.
But that's the thing about Star Wars. You watch A New Hope and that fight between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's not important about how fiddly it is. It's kind of like it's about what it means. You know.
Yeah.
So
it's the emotional
there's a
angle
lot
behind
of
the fight.
resonance. There's a lot of resonance in that fight.
Yeah.
And when you look at Revenge of the Sith and there's like a 20-minute sword fight,
Yeah.
it's boring as fuck and it doesn't mean anything. And it's
Yeah,
like,
it just goes on for so long.
Because the bit when they jump on those little droids and then fly over the lava and you go, nobody wanted this, George. What the fuck are you doing? So with Highlander, it's just kind of like there are these long, very clunky sword fights, and what you really want is the emotionality to be drawn out of it a bit, so that it means more at the end. I think I think it does quite. It goes quite a distance to sort of like doing that with that scene. I think there could have been more of an emotional impact for Sean Connery dying. It could have been more kind of like there could have been a bit more dramatic irony.
I think by the end though, when he has the sort of the final fight, we got the great sort of windows behind them, the Kurgan and McLeod.
Yes,
the emotional angles there.
but
I think it's done. I think Michael Kamen does a lot of the work though. He has to do a lot of legwork to make it sort of work, which is a job of a composer, you know.
You're sort of waiting for it to happen, though, aren't you? The whole film is you waiting for this fight at the end. You know, it's like, where's the Kurgan now, right? The Kurgan knows what he needs to be doing. He's got one job. This is the best scene in any of the films. He's got one job, which is to kill all of the rest of the immortals, right?
Yeah.
And he's just sat around waiting for the entire film. And so you're all waiting for him to just get to it. Whereas if he'd have been introduced later on and he was constantly attacking them throughout history, or if it was a tournament...
He never seemed to be attacking him throughout history.
He's
like, where's he? Where is
that
he?
one thing in the Highlands and then he's not back in it again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if there was like a tournament and he'd killed off many of the other...
Immortals?
Yeah, many of the other mortals through that, and it's Highlander 3 set in this period, isn't it?
Highlander 3. Well, it has flashbacks. Yeah, flashback moment. Yeah. But then it's got it's just, you know, it has the I can't remember the actor's name, the villain. He's just kind of been frozen in time, isn't he? So
Mario Van Peebles.
Yeah, the rules of the prize have just got all been skewed, haven't they? So he kind of breaks free.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to make sequel. I mean, but again, this is like a budgetary thing. I would love to have watched a Highlander film that was set in 3 ages. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be great.
But this is kind of like we've got 5 costumes and we're on an estate, and we've got like a horse and a wagon, and that sequence is like what, a day of filming, a morning of filming.
Oh yeah.
It took half a day to film that sequence, but it adds so much into the film. It gives it production value on very little. They're just basically filmed outside a big kind of like mansion, and they're wearing Regency clothes.
You know.
Yeah, and they're wearing Regency clothes, and then they do like a little sketch, and then you put that in a film and it adds kind of like an extra layer to it. So Clancy Brown isn't available that day, so they've done this other bit. And you've got all these bits that, like the World War II sequence. You've got, you know, it's kind of like, right, that's taken like a day to film that sequence. It looks like it's filmed on kind of like some wasteland, but it adds to the film. It kind of, the American version cutting that out.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? It's because obviously how they structured it, they thought, okay, well, any sort of time, anything set in the past is always going to be a flashback. So it has to have a line of dialogue to sort of trigger those memories for it to sort of work. I think, I suppose what would have worked in its favour is that if it just had a chronological kind of order to it, where we start, you know, in the 1500s and work our way forward.
Yeah, and do like a montage. Do a montage sequence of him kind of like killing people through his, you know, moments in history.
Yeah, yeah. There was supposed to be a scene where he's with Napoleon. Then he makes him like a commander or whatever, a colonel in his army. That was all dropped.
I don't feel like these are shortcomings. Just to clarify, I don't think these are shortcomings of this film. I think this film is as it is. I really enjoy it. I think that it's flawed. I don't think they filmed enough, and then they filmed too much. I mean, it's kind of like you got too much of some stuff and not enough of others.
Yeah.
But I'm just highlighting the fact that you could do like a great remake of this and just add so much to it without copying the story exactly. You could kind of give it more of a purpose. You're waiting around for the Kurgan to just do something, you know, and so you need to do the flashbacks because nothing's actually happening in the main story.
Yeah.
The main story is Connor. Hang on, who is it? Is it Duncan or Connor?
Duncan is the guy in the TV show. It's Connor. It's Connor McLeod.
Connor McLeod.
Yeah, that's who Christopher is. Yeah.
So who's this guy? This guy's in loads of stuff.
Oh, he weirdly because I'd covered Superman 3 not long ago. He's one of the coal miners at the end, with the other guy who was in, I think, is it Coronation Street maybe, or like something like that. But yeah, one of them. He's one of the guys who's one of the coal miners who just goes to Richard Pryor, "Hey, do you know him?" And he's like, "Oh, me, Superman." You know, he pops up in quite a few things.
Yeah, I'm gonna level with you. That's not what I remember him from.
Of course, only I would remember stupid shit like that. But he's in. He's a lot of supporting.
He's normally got a moustache.
He's in Only Fools and Horses. He plays the loopy guy. Who's on the loose.
No, not that.
Oh, okay.
Not that. Yeah. Right. Okay. So,
look at this.
If the Kurgan was kind of like an immortal serial killer,
yes,
and he goes through time and he's killing off all of these immortals, and he's getting closer and closer to our main character, you know, but he's not. He kills 2 immortals in the present day. It's just a bit aimless.
You could have had like the Kurgan. His whole goal has just been a lie. Like he's out for this prize, which he thinks is something that's going to gain him power over everyone. But it's all just like a massive lie. But the power he gets, what Connor gets, isn't like power over everyone. He can read everyone's minds. But he has the ability to have children and stuff. So it's kind of a happy ending kind of power. It's not like the Kurgan. He thinks he's going to rule forever.
Right.
You know, that could be,
in actual fact,
if you changed it up a little bit or just add a bit of spin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you get to a point where he's killed the last immortal and nothing happens. Yeah. And then he's just like, right, well, there's got to be another immortal somewhere, you know.
Yeah. Then, there's your sequel. You know?
You've got kind of like this guy in hiding and he's got to fight. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, there's a prophecy and he thinks that he's gone through and he's done it all, but it turns out that this bit is just, like this is
because we now have 2 sequences, don't we, where he's just driving around like a lunatic.
Yeah. And it's never like, how does she get onto the front of the fucking car that quick? Now she's on the front of the car. It's just like, and what are we meant to be doing? Rolling around the aisles, just thinking this is the most hilarious thing. So there's this sequence where he goes into the hospital,
sort of wide lens,
which I think just ages it. Is this in the hospital or is this?
Yeah, it's where it's essentially where the police finished their investigation, isn't it? Really.
And it's the very last scene where these characters are ever in it, and they're never mentioned again. And then what? We've still got half an hour of the film, and the main plot is just all the.
I like it when the guy who's been stabbed, he explains to them what he saw, and it's kind of shot through like a glass, so someone's kind of watching him reenact the quickening. He just goes like this. There's no sound. You just see him kind of screaming, which kind of is quite funny. I think he would be dead. I think if he got impaled in the chest and lifted up in the air, I think he would. I think that probably would have killed you.
I think he would definitely be. He would definitely be dead.
It looks like he's had his appendix removed or something. I don't know. He's just like, oh, I'm fine. Get me some grapes. I'll be good.
But so what they've got is they've got this non-story. So the plot of Highlander is you've got Christopher Lambert, who is in modern day New York, and he's waiting around to fight this main bad guy. The main bad guy doesn't really feature. He meets him in. He's the guy that kills him originally, and he discovers that he's immortal through the Kurgan.
Yeah.
Never bumps into him again for another 500 years.
I know. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Or 700 years. So that's the plot. Is he's waiting around. So what they've done is they've added this cop plot, and the cop plot doesn't really involve any of the main characters. It's literally they are trying to find out information that we as an audience already know.
Yeah.
So it's not a mystery. And then what's he meant to have gained from this cop now? Then they just fuck off and never in the film again.
Well, the cops are kind of thrown it back to square one because now the person they thought it was is now someone else who they've never encountered.
So why aren't they part of the final battle?
Yeah.
Why? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of.
So the cops could have been called to, is it Brenda's location, and then they sort of just get cut up or just get attacked in the conflict of trying to save her.
It's like they forgot that they were in the film.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind so much, but you've got to sit through so much of that police bullshit that there's absolutely no payoff. Do you know what I mean? It's like having to. I can cope with Jar Jar Binks in the Phantom Menace if there's some sort of payoff later on, and there's not. Do you know what I mean? It's like I will just drop him. So it's kind of like, I don't mind being bored by the police stuff as long as there's some sort of payoff, and there's absolutely no payoff. They just drop it. And it's because you go, well, surely you could have come up with loads of sequences instead of the cop stuff. And you go, yeah, they could have. It would have cost fucking loads of money. Do you know it's cheap? An open plan office and people with plastic badges.
Yeah. But I think that would have been, as you were suggesting about the Kurgan sort of following MacLeod through time. They should have had more like encounters that Connor is constantly on the run to hide from this guy because he knows he's not ready for this kind of battle. That would have added a little bit of sort of threat and to, sort of anticipation to sort of this kind of big finale. And it's such a, because he's been around for so long, he surely would have bumped into him because they're both after one another for this prize.
Yeah. What I would say is, as a standalone, cheapo, mid-1980s Terminator ripoff, this film is fine. It's the sort of thing that should thrive in a video shop, and it should be kind of like a beloved classic and a cult classic. Yeah, great. But through all the sequels and the TV shows and nostalgia, it's sort of become something that it never was.
Yeah.
And in that case, why not make a remake where you just absolutely nail all the stuff that you love about it? Sort of like what they did with Friday the 13th when they remade that, and they go, oh, all the stuff that you like, we'll just do a remake that's that.
Was that the one produced by Michael Bay? That one?
Yeah, although that's a terrible example because that film is absolute bullshit.
I suppose maybe you're referring to Halloween.
No, I mean the Friday the 13th remake. They basically do like a pre-title sequence, which is an entire Friday the 13th.
They combined 1 to 3, didn't they? Like for that Michael Bay one. Yeah, I thought that was kind of. I didn't think it was awful. I thought it was.
It's just pointless. The opening title sequence is half an hour. And it's an entire Friday the 13th movie in half an hour, and then they do a Friday the 13th movie in an hour, and you kind of like go, you've already proven that you can do it in half an hour. Why take twice as long to do it again in the same film? Why not do something completely different now that we're up to speed? It's annoying. Anyway,
But also, we now have the other rule, don't we, of this kind of the Highlander series was never fight on holy ground, which is never really explained. And they sort of, I think throughout the sequels, they often drop that idea, then throw it back in again. I think with different various cuts of the movies. You know, they're never happy, are they, with the sort of where these films go.
I never questioned it, and it's one of those things where when fans take over, it becomes law, and then fans become obsessive about this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like it was never meant to be analysed to that degree. It was literally kind of a bit of fun.
I suppose it adds a bit of folklore to it, doesn't it? You know, to the myth.
It is some guy's first draft in a screenwriting course.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He sold it to Hollywood. They've got this nice concept. They've kind of changed it a bit. They weren't planning on Sean Connery being in it. Fucking hell, people are actually going to see this film. it should be a straight-to-video Rutger Hauer movie, you know?
Rutger Hauer, yeah. Like Split Second.
And it's not. It's kind of... It's kind of like... I mean, he's such a disgusting character.
Yeah. Better burn out than to fade away.
I hate the little tufts of hair that he's still got on his shaved head.
It's a bit half-assed, isn't it, for him? The makeup here is really bad. On his neck, it looks like some sort of Fisher-Price sort of fake bacon. They've just put on his neck with some sort of pins, you know.
So this is a bald wig, is it?
Oh yeah.
And they've added kind of stubble, and in HD you can actually really see that it's
it's not good.
I always wondered why Clancy Brown had such an unusual shaped head, and it's because his hair is underneath it. This is kind of like a classic scene from movies, isn't it? Where you have them meet up in a church and have like...
Well, it's the moment in Heat.
It's like the scene in Heat. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's like the quiet before the storm.
Yeah. It's the Pacino De Niro moment, isn't it, in the cafe?
Yeah, I mean, for years we've wanted to see...
I watched Heat the other week, and I've not seen it since I was like a teenager. I thought it was a brilliant film. Really good.
Really?
Bit long.
Overrated. No, it's fine, isn't it? I haven't seen it since the cinema, I don't think.
Oh, right. That's like from 96, wasn't it? Came out? 97?
95, 96, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, look at the... Yeah. I definitely didn't see this in HD then.
It's supposed to be coming out in 4K, but I don't know what's going on with that, because they re-released it. Obviously, this remaster they did was all
Who gives a fuck? Do you know what I mean? It's like... It's not meant to be what... Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, yeah, there's some nice cinematography in it, I suppose, but like it's meant to be grainy as fuck and VHS and feel sort of dirty.
Well, I don't think that was the director's intent. Make it look as shit as possible.
Well, it hides that makeup, doesn't it?
It's close it's going to look to 35mm, you know.
I do, yeah. I mean, I do sort of. I mean, he gets what? Has he had his neck sliced yet?
Yeah. He had his neck sliced by Ramirez, didn't he? That's
Sean Connery.
That's why he's got the.
That's why he's got that gravelly voice.
Yeah. His voice is fucked. Yeah. And he gets his neck cut again, doesn't he? Near the end, which is great.
It's just weird, isn't it? It's kind of like you tell me what this film is about, I'm 100% on board, and yet the scenes that they've chosen to tell the story is kind of like, I wouldn't have done any of this.
It's a movie. If you try and explain the movie to people, they'd be like a bit confused, you know, like especially with the casting. But it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I know a lot of people who just hate this film. They just don't get it, or they didn't connect with them.
Why do they hate it?
I just think it's kind of ludicrous in a way, and I think it's a little bit cheesy. I think if you didn't grow up with it, and you watch it as an adult, like you've had no experience with it before, it does feel like a very strange kind of film.
Do you know what? I've just had like a premonition, if this whole film was in French and it had subtitles, you would forgive it absolutely everything. But
you just go, oh, it's just European filmmaking. It's bonkers.
Yeah,
just accept it.
You know, like El Mariachi.
Yeah.
And you watch El Mariachi and it's all like subtitled because they're all speaking in Mexican. And you kind of like, it feels like an art house film.
That's the funny thing. It's like The Fifth Element. People don't seem to like. Like I love it because it's so European and French and bonkers, and I love it because of that. But some people just can't accept it for that because it's too campy and weird and just too foreign, you know, in that sort of execution. But I think it's, you know, that's what makes it interesting, you know.
So I don't like this camera that he's using. There's Ramirez's peacock cloak.
Yeah, he's kept things, hasn't he?
He's kept his hat.
His Highlander collectibles.
The set decorators done their best.
Done a good job, I think. Yeah, they've done a good job.
Done their best. They've just taken everything that they could.
This is funny though because because she finds out he's immortal, it sort of makes him super attractive. And because the next scene's a sex scene, you know. It's also happened in the sequel actually as well. She finds out he was like Conor McLeod and he's never aged, and they have sex behind this back alley, which is really weird.
This is oh yeah, right near the beginning, isn't it? They
yeah, did it? She just after he meets her, he gives her a good fucking.
But he has been around for a very long time.
He's got everything. VD.
This is not a great way to pick up girls, by the way, for anyone that's listening.
Stabbing yourself. Oh, I can live forever, you know. Really. But you know, this sort of the love sequence. It's scored. There's like a rearrangement of the Who Wants to Live Forever stuff, and it's one of the best pieces of music in the film, I think.
I don't think Who Wants to Live Forever is the sexiest song you can play when you're having sex.
it's a bit cheesy and a bit on the nose, but
it's like no, I think it's more like what are you trying to tell me? Maybe you should rub her up, mate.
Especially during the 80s, you know.
Yeah, but again, it's like Terminator, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, actually, also, I think it's also a similar sort of sequence.
We'll take the main theme from Terminator, and we'll have a little bit of sex in there, about the same point in the film. And it's like, I'm not saying it's a rip-off, but they've taken so many elements from Terminator, whizzed them together, and just given it a different mythology, and then.
There's another power he has.
Plot-wise, it's different.
There's another power he has here where he can somewhat communicate with the animals. He looks at the lion and he sort of gives it a sort of look, and it sort of goes oh and just walks away. And
sure. Yeah,
so that's another sort of thing they don't really explain, but it's a good moment in the background though. So Clancy Brown's kind of watching him. That's a great sequence.
I didn't notice that until last time I saw it.
Yeah, it's good.
There should be more moments like that.
Yes,
definitely.
It's
just like this modern day sequence. Do you know what? It should have been a romance. It should have been a guy who was in hiding from being an immortal, and he was, you know, if you take out the police procedural element of it, and you make it into more of a romance where that is the driving force behind the film, I think you've got it's a better film.
It's like he's eating a mini milk then.
Yeah, probably. And she's got this like cardboard door that she's going to lock.
Also, she looks like she lives in a castle. Because like, look at the corridor.
But she's got some fucking samurai swords right there. Is he at his house, or is he at Connor's house, or?
It's her house.
It's her house.
Yeah, which is
so
massive.
She's got some samurai swords.
And she's got some great lighting in the house as well. You know, it's like a red light district house, isn't it?
Yeah, but like all of a sudden it's a music video, and you're kind of like, oh.
But this sequence though does contain a fantastic sort of cover of New York, New York by Freddie Mercury, which is only like
I think
it's like 50 seconds long. It's just incredible.
I just, yeah, this. By this point, this is padding.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
do we really need another car chase sequence? What we really need is for him to have kidnapped Highlander's girlfriend, taken her to the last sort of like battle place.
Yeah.
And we need to be with Connor McLeod now, finding out that his girlfriend's been kidnapped. And now he's got to hunt him down.
You could have had Clancy Brown just grab her, then it cuts to McLeod turning up her apartment and just thinking, what's going on here? You know, sort of.
So it's just another music. It's just another music video sequence. And is he running people over? Is that what those shots are? Are people dying? Is he killing people? What's going on, guys? But I'm just not invested at this point, and I'm bored. Well, I am. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you can't.
It's a good bit of humour where she screams like "shut up" and he just sort of mimes to what she's saying, which is quite funny.
I mean, you say a good bit of humour.
No, you kind of even though Clancy doesn't really like the humour that's thrown in, I think he's kind of his humour still kind of works.
I don't like it.
You don't like it, no? Oh.
It makes me like his performance a lot more now that I know that he had to do a lot of this against his will.
Mm.
I don't understand. They've literally just done a shot of a man flying off his motorbike with very little context to it. I don't know what's happened there.
And this stuff here though by Freddie's fantastic. I think it'd be great if he did a whole album of just sort of doing these covers of these classic songs.
How many times do you see a film where someone gets kidnapped and then you see them drive to the place where he's going to take them? It just goes on for fucking ages. It's just like, and then they get to the Silver Cup place and he points and he goes, "That's where we're going." And you go, "Great, absolutely great." That's 3 minutes of padding that you don't need.
But Conan doesn't have to do any of the sort of investigating because he just has the voicemail on his recorder. Just go, "I'm going to be here." "Oh, okay, I'll be waiting."
So it's like a shortcut, isn't it?
Yeah. Which I should have, that whole car chase should have been a shortcut to this bit,
Surely why is he kidnapped her?
To draw him out, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, but shouldn't he just he knows where he is? He's just kidnapped his girlfriend.
Yeah, true.
So why doesn't he just come and confront him to a sword fight?
We could just turn up at his antiques place and just hack the place to bits and just have a big fight.
He literally knows where he lives. He knows where he works.
He's got his phone number.
He's just killed his mate. There's no plot. They're inventing stuff. They're inventing stuff to happen in this film that doesn't need to be there. In actual fact, you can come up with a better storyline for these characters and this mythology straight away. I'm being very well. I just think there's a better film in this film.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be good to read the original script and what that how that was structured and how it ended, because he said that they sort of played up more the comic book elements and fantastical elements and threw in humour and changed some of the characters around. I don't know. Maybe sort of if they did a remake, sort of maybe follow that a little bit more closely and sort of explore some of the backstory to these characters a bit more, so a bit more development there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I
certainly
don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to know why they're Highlanders or why they're immortals. I don't need to know any of that information.
You don't need to know.
It's
that,
fine with him just saying it's a kind of magic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what came first? Was that line of dialogue in there first when he says it's a kind of magic?
That's a good question, Nick.
Because that feels very much like they'd written the song for the film and then they'd thrown that line in to make the song relevant.
I think so.
Do you know what I mean?
Because they only showed Queen like 20 minutes of footage which they'd kind of done. So maybe during the course of it, they'd, sort of come up with the idea it's a kind of magic, and then they threw that into the film. Maybe the other way around. I don't know. It's
I think, yeah, it feels very much like that the soundtrack was in development whilst the film was, so they've thrown in some details.
Yeah. A bit of an afterthought,
Yeah.
It's a bit where you can see some of the great stunt doubles here, for Christopher Lambert.
I never really have a problem with stunt doubles. Except for in later things.
I don't expect actors to do everything,
But when in Face Off, where they're on the speedboat and they've made absolutely no effort to hide their faces, and it's literally you're now watching two completely different dudes having this fight on a speedboat. That's weird. But in stuff like this, where it's edited together and you're an adult, and I can buy into the fantasy of like, this is they've made a film, and this is how you make a film. I like seeing the seams. It makes me appreciate
this bit always
it a
didn't
lot
really
more.
make sense though, because they fall, because it floods and then they fall through the glass, through to the inside the building, but all this water's with them, which doesn't actually come with them when they fall through.
Oh really?
Yeah, the stunt doubles there. It's great. Look at that.
Oh yeah. But I've never noticed that until you pointed it out, and I've kind of like just always enjoyed it for. I mean, honey, it was ruined already.
You can see the cable harness for her. It's in full display. Like she's supposed to be just
Don't have
dangling
a
by.
problem.
She's got
Do
a massive
not have
cable.
a problem.
Yeah, it's weird.
I think it's it's quaint. I just think if you're taken up by the story and the events and the sequence, then you don't really notice those things. There's so many mistakes in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade and stuff like that, where you just kind of like go along with it. Not that this is Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade.
I mean, it's a great set piece, despite the sort of the clunky sort of.
I
battle
suppose
sword
so.
Fights. I think it's nicely sort of played out and.
It's just
staged.
taken so long to get here. Also, all of the sword fights so far have been dark, underlit. There's been a couple in some alleyways. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not really providing. Even the Ramirez fight is in a castle that's falling apart. Now we're on a building that's falling apart. It's kind of like it's not really offering a lot of variety in the fights.
No.
And with every Highlander that you've got, you're introducing, with every Immortal that you've got, you're introducing a new fighting style. Do you know what I mean? So every sword fight is a different experience.
Yeah. But the sword fight, in sequels like Highlander 2, the sword fights are terrible in that film. It's just back and forth, like clonk, clonk, clonk,
Yes.
This one, there is definitely,
Yes.
by the end, this sequence here is where they really kind of make an effort. And it looks wonderful.
Yeah. It's great. The bit when the camera sort of dollies across the floor really quickly.
Yeah,
it's
the
great.
music all swells up. It's really good.
Yeah, nobody's saying that they haven't made an effort.
I think do you think it's just like it's Western filmmaking with like kind of fighting and stuff? It's like I thought by this point, where 2021, we've been spoilt with action from the East, with Hong Kong cinema for so long.
Yeah, right, okay.
But
I'm also saying that in the context of this film, this is the fourth fight.
Yeah, and they get it right by the fourth fight, I think.
There's not a lot of variety in the fights, so we're kind of watching the same thing again. Mm-hmm. This is the second time he's defended her from the Kurgan.
Yeah.
There's two alleyway fights and the castle fight and this fight. That's a great. Oh, look at that! That's brilliant.
It goes back and it just sort of goes in again. It sort of goes forward.
So there's enough moments for me to remember this film very fondly.
Yeah.
But
it's all one take as well. That is good. That's what we want to do. One long take of a sword fight that sort of goes on.
Yeah, and like what today's standards, it would be chopped the fuck out of to hide the fact that
They can't
neither
fight.
of the actors have had enough training.
Yeah, and there's no close-ups there. It's all, it's all covered in mids and long shots, which is good.
Well, they had to really do stuff, What's that Steven Seagal film where he plays a sniper and he doesn't stand up for the entire film?
He doesn't stand
He does the whole he does the whole film sat down because he's a sniper.
What a great job, eh?
You go, fucking hell, mate.
Can I sit down in this one? Yeah, sure, Stephen. Why not? I don't know, matey. I don't know. We don't know. I love his eyes go jet black near the end as well. I love that.
It's horrible. This last fight is great.
The music's fantastic. And he cuts his throat and he makes that kind of weird, like, demonic sound. All these demons come out of him.
So this is Michael Kamen right now, right?
Yeah. It's all Kamen. Who didn't really... Because I've covered a few films which he scored, and Kamen wasn't really a fan of action, but he sort of ended up doing quite a lot of action scores, like Lethal Weapon.
He did loads of
Die
action.
Hard. Lethal Weapon was kind of a lot more jazz, wasn't it? Thrown in with Eric Clapton stuff. But...
Sure, but
Robin
so
Hood,
he did
Prince of
Lethal
Thieves as
Weapon,
well,
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. They're using the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves music in a fucking insurance advert at the moment, and it's kind of like, what? It's crazy.
That's a bit weird.
The DVD extras for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where Michael Kamen talks about how he composes music, it's just absolutely incredible. And he looks exactly like John Belushi.
He does, yeah. He was like, he was a bit of a rocker, wasn't he? He was like, played. I think either he produced music or like in a rock band, but that sort of rock element just fits so well with this. Look at that. That's great. I do like the sort of rotoscope sort of animated sequence here.
I love all of these old fashioned. So those are the lines, but you see them. Do you see these two bolts of lightning that are hiding his wires? That's very convenient.
Yeah. They're quite chunky wires, actually. It doesn't, So they dropped... With the sequels, they never did this, did they? They never continued with this sort of animated stuff. I think it's just effort they've got to put into it.
It's a ball ache, isn't it?
Yeah. But it fits with the music video stuff, like what Steve Barron was doing with Aha and things like that. It's...
Oh, yeah. It looks like 80s music videos. And I think maybe if there was more stuff like that in the film, or less stuff like that in the film.
More or less, Nick. Yeah. More of it, or maybe less,
But pick one or the other, do you know what I mean? If that's what you're going to do.
True. Well, it's only used at the end because he's now got the prize, hasn't he? He's now won whatever. Well, the power to read people's minds.
It's a bit of shit, isn't it?
I don't want that power.
Well, I mean, they could have had like... No, I suppose they were like one and done. Right, this is the movie.
That's what destroyed the franchise, wasn't it? Because it wasn't written to have a sequel. And because it was successful, all these distributors wanted a sequel. And they're like, oh, this wasn't written to have... it's a finite ending, and they're like, "Oh, you'll come up with something," and they came up with the most bonkers idea ever, that they were from the planet Zeist,
which I think actually improves it. That's purely for people that have watched this whole film, going, "Yeah, but why are they immortal?" By the end of it, people still haven't bought into it, and you go, "Those guys aren't going to come and see a sequel, guys. Just deal with it," But what they've done is they've made a sequel for people that didn't completely buy into the original, and you're like, well, and so we've got Sean Connery again at the end. He's not been in it for like an hour, and at the end of the film, when you leave the cinema, you go, bloody hell, Sean Connery was good in that.
Yeah.
But they're just reusing footage from the 20 minutes that he's in the centre of the film.
And an extended voiceover,
It's clever. It's really clever, but it's a use of budget. And when I'm saying that you can see the budgetary restraints, I think it's really impressive. They're using this scenery. This scenery is great. It adds production value to it.
I did like the idea when they cut to Scotland and you saw like that fighter jet, which sort of visualizes, tells you it's contemporary time. You think, oh, it could be a flashback, but it's not.
Yeah, I think there's loads of really great stuff in this film. I do enjoy it. I think Christopher Lambert's really good. Christophe Lambert. I think Sean Connery is great in it, and it's almost like one of his iconic performances, even though he's hardly in it.
Yeah. It's a superb performance for a supporting role, and
yeah.
I mean, Sean's always been pretty good, isn't he, in everything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of them. He's one of those consistent actors. I'm watching a lot of Christopher Plummer movies at the moment.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And Christopher Plummer is always Christopher Plummer, but the spectrum within that is huge. Whereas, he can play Sherlock Holmes one year, and then in the next film he can play a serial killer.
Yeah.
And it's he's great. Whereas Sean Connery is Sean Connery, and you put him in the film, and you know what you're kind of getting. I do think it's kind of interesting. Like, this was the beginning of his sort of like supporting period. This was just before Untouchables, just before Last Crusade.
And the Hunt for October, yeah.
Hunt for Red October, where he's kind of like a joint lead.
Yeah, it's like a joint starring role, isn't it, with Baldwin?
But like, this is like, were it not for Highlander, he would probably not have enjoyed the success that he had in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where he managed to...
Random cameo at the end as well. You know.
But like, people, when he died, people were just like, oh, and of course Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and you go, that's like a joke, right? Like, that's like saying the King of England was a Scottish guy. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, you can't count Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Sean had played Robin Hood in the 70s in Robin and Marion, that sort of.
Robin and Marion. Also,
Dick Lester film, isn't it?
Also, I can't remember where I found this out, but like Mel Brooks asked Sean Connery to play King Richard in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh, amazing.
And Sean Connery was up for it, but then it didn't work out. So they got Patrick Stewart to do it. And Patrick Stewart does it with a Scottish accent in tribute. But this, we've got like 30 seconds left. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I still love this movie despite its kind of obvious flaws, and it's and as you pointed out, it's a lot of elements from the Terminator, but it's because of its kind of clunkiness in areas, it still kind of works for me. I think the emotional connection I have to it is the sort of love story and the music. The music is so important for it, and it still resonates with me. And despite the casting of a Frenchman to play a Scotsman and a Scotsman to play an Egyptian, it's bonkers and it shouldn't work, but it somehow gets away with it. And it's a movie that should have, on paper, it should be a disaster, but it isn't.
I think those are the elements that sort of make it more memorable and that make me love it more. Is having a Frenchman play a Scottishman opposite a Scottishman playing a Spanish Egyptian. It's just baffling, and then you go, oh, fine, and I love it for that. And there is I just think that the story is fucking boring as fuck, and it does the mythology a disservice. But I absolutely completely understand why it is that way, because it was like this low budget cyberpunk action thriller where they were just like, we don't really have the budget to do what we want to do, so we'll pad it with this police story. And it's only much later on in my life that I've rewatched it and I've gone, I think that's the problem, Whereas when I was younger, I knew that there was a point in the film where I stopped paying attention, where I got a bit bored, but I still rented it out and I still really enjoyed it. And it's the Regency part, and it's the Second World War part, and it's the Scottish Highlands part, which I think are my favourite bits. The modern New York stuff, most of that feels like padding and just getting to it. But filming in modern day America was cheap. You don't need set decoration. You don't need costumes for that. You know, you've just literally, it's modern day, it's not period. So you can understand why most of the film is set there. And I think if you were going to remake it, a large part of it would be throughout history, and then you'd finish either modern day or in the future.
Yeah. As you were saying, sort of, you know, the sort of iconic imagery of it when we were sort of discussing the ending part and the battle. The whole film is so visually rich. You know, if you don't come away feeling that, thinking the story is that memorable, the imagery, the visual imagery will stick in your head.
Yeah, I think that
plays into nostalgia.
And what I was saying earlier about that Regency sequence is it adds so much to the film because subconsciously you've gone to another period in time within this film, but in actuality they've done it in about 3 or 4 shots. It's probably taken about 7 hours filming. They've got 5 or 6 costumes, a horse-drawn carriage and a National Trust building in the background. And with very little stuff, they've transported you through time to this bit. And it adds so much to the film where when you think back on it, you feel like you've really kind of like gone through time. The World War II sequence is nothing, but you still feel like you've touched that part of history through this film. It's just I think it's very economical, and the thing is that sort of like makes it weaker is rewatching it with all of this kind of awe, by like going, oh, this film is an untouchable piece of genius, and it's not. It's a really kind of clever genre film where they're kind of pulling loads of tricks on you. Where it's kind of like, yeah, we've got 5 costumes and we're filming at National Trust. Yeah, we've got this police procedural thing that doesn't go anywhere. And they're throwing all these tricks at you where you kind of can't put your finger on it at the time what doesn't work about the film, because it's just kind of like, because you sort of like go along with it. And then later on when you rewatch it, you go, that's why the film doesn't work exactly right. And that's why it could be improved with a remake. If you were doing a remake, you'd be an absolute fucking idiot if you started with like a police mystery. Well, who's this? You know, do you know what I mean? That would be the first thing to be dropped. And it would be a time travel romance with like, I don't know, sort of like almost like the way that Mortal Kombat should have been made, which looks like that's going to have been solved this time. But it's kind of like you've got, and I don't really find, or like Enter the Dragon or something like that, where you've got, what I've been using this term all the way through, but now I've forgotten it, where you have like a load of contests. What do you call that?
Like a tournament.
Yeah, tournament film. I find the idea of tournament films quite boring, really, as well. But if you had kind of like a series of battles throughout this film leading to a final battle, and it was over time and history, and you had different immortals bringing in different fighting styles to make the battles kind of like more varied. You had different kind of like periods in. He has a duel with someone that isn't a Highlander. One of the sword fights in this film is just with a dude that he's pissed off at a party. You kind of like go, isn't that sort of a wasted moment? It's the best. I think it's the best bit in the film, but it's sort of like a wasted moment, you know, where you go, it was a sword fight and you didn't use it to say anything about the Highlander, about the Immortals. Oh, I guess they did though. You know, he was drunk and immortal, and it didn't matter if he got into fights, I suppose. Anyway, I think I like it on paper, and then it's a bit of a chore to sit through, and then I know that there's something better within the mythology that you could make out of it. It's an exciting idea.
Well, there you go, folks. That is the end of the commentary. Hope you all enjoyed it, and me and Nick will be back with some more in the near future. I think there were some other films we had discussed, hadn't we, Nick, about covering as commentaries. I think, wasn't The Expendables we'd thought about at some point, hadn't we?
Yeah, but it's just going to be talking about wasted opportunities, isn't it? So
Back to the sort of the Highlander discussion of wasted opportunity.
I think well, the Expendables are wasted opportunities, whereas Highlander is making, is like you said, is trying to make the best out of a huge idea and a tiny budget.
Yeah,
we'll see what we
we'll see what we'll come up with. Yeah, in the next coming weeks. Well, everyone, take care of yourselves and goodbye.
Oh, bye.